Jasmine's eyes burned with purpose as she reached for her phone time to make a call that would change everything. But before we dive into this unforgettable story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever witnessed injustice and wanted to see it made right, because what this powerful black woman does next will leave you speechless. Jasmine Winters never forgot her roots. She grew up on the cracked sidewalks of Detroit's East Side, where her mother Eloise juggled 3 jobs just to put food on the table. Those early struggles shaped Jasmine more than her current $4 billion net worth ever could. At 37, Jasmine had built a noosphere from a tiny coding project in her apartment into one of America's most groundbreaking tech firms. Her security software revolutionized data protection across industries. Yet, despite her towering success, Jasmine lived modestly by choice. No Beverly Hills mansions, no celebrity yacht parties. My mother taught me that real character isn't what you show off, it's what you do when no one's watching, she often reminded her executive team. Just 3 days ago, Jasmine had quietly finalized the $14 billion acquisition of Legacy Airlines, a mid-sized carrier with a solid route map but falling customer satisfaction. The public announcement wasn't due until next month. For now, few employees even knew their company had a new owner. Jasmine had a tradition before every major acquisition: experience the company as an ordinary customer. She called it undercover bossing, her way of seeing the truth behind executive reports. But this flight wasn't just about business. Jasmine was flying to Atlanta for her mother's funeral. Eloise had passed away from aggressive pancreatic cancer just 5 days earlier. Grief clung to her like a second skin. She'd buried herself in work as a distraction, finalizing the deal with sleepless determination. Now, dressed in simple jeans and a navy blouse far from her usual boardroom attire, she looked like any other traveler. Her only indulgence was a delicate diamond pendant around her neck. Inside, it was a tiny photo of her mother, a 30th birthday gift. "You'll go places I never could, baby girl," Eloise had told her. "Just remember to take me with you." From coding genius to CEO, Jasmine had endured her share of discrimination: investors ignoring her in meetings, security tailing her in luxury stores, hotel staff doubting she belonged. Through it all, she clung to her mother's wisdom. Success is the best revenge, but kindness is what makes it last. A sudden commotion at the lounge entrance pulled Amani's attention from her tablet. A tall, broad-shouldered white man with silver hair and a sharp red tie was speaking loudly to Carlton, gesturing forcefully toward the seating area. Even from across the room, Amani recognized him instantly: Bradley Whitfield, CEO of Whitfield Technologies and a longtime rival of her firm. Apparently, he was also on her flight to Tokyo. His voice rang through the otherwise quiet lounge. "What? Do you mean it's occupied? That's my seat. I always sit there when I fly through here." Carlton, who had previously greeted Amani with cool professionalism, now bent toward Bradley with eager deference. "I understand, Mr. Whitfield. Let me see what I can do." Moments later, the lounge manager appeared, a thin man with a receding hairline, his name tag reading Wayne. He conferred briefly with Carlton before both men approached Amani, their expressions tight with discomfort but laced with forced politeness. "Excuse me, Miss Johnson," Wayne began, his voice low, as though hoping the quiet tone would neutralize the confrontation. "There seems to have been a misunderstanding." Amani looked up, her face unreadable. What misunderstanding would that be? Wayne shifted his weight awkwardly. "This particular seating area is usually reserved for our longtime platinum members. Mr. Whitfield has used this exact spot for many years." Without a word, Amani closed her tablet slowly and deliberately. "I'm a platinum member too," she replied calmly, retrieving her card and holding it out. "And I wasn't aware specific seats in the lounge were assigned." Wayne's smile thinned. "They're not officially assigned, of course. It's more of a courtesy. extended to our most valued customers. I see. Her tone remained composed, but she was fully aware now that several lounge patrons were quietly watching. So, despite having platinum status, I don't qualify as a most valued customer. Bradley had stepped closer, looming just behind Wayne, arms crossed and radiating impatience. It's just that Mr. Whitfield always sits here, Carlton interjected, as if the repetition would legitimize the request. I've been a member for 8 years, Amani said, her voice still even, and nowhere in the membership agreement does it state seating is assigned by seniority or habit. She gestured toward the room. There are plenty of empty seats with the same view. Wayne's expression stiffened. Miss Johnson, we're simply trying to accommodate all our guests. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in one of the eastern seating areas. It's quite lovely this time of day. The implication was clear. Move voluntarily or be moved. Amani felt the familiar fire rise in her chest. She had met this moment before in boardrooms, lobbies, and lounges just like this. One discrimination, dressed up as policy. She looked Wayne in the eye. I'm perfectly comfortable right here. Thank you. I arrived first. I'm a platinum member, and there's no valid reason I should move. Bradley stepped forward, now towering over her. Look, I don't know who you are, but I've sat in that seat for 15 years. It's where I prep for business trips, where I take calls. It's my seat. Amani rose to meet him, unshaken. At 5'7" in heels, she still had to look up, but her presence filled the space. Mr. Whitfield, I know exactly who you are, she said evenly. And while I understand your attachment to this particular chair, this lounge does not belong to you. I arrived first. I'm a legitimate member. I have every right to be here. Bradley's face flushed with frustration. He turned sharply to Wayne. Is this how you treat loyal customers? Letting random people take their seats? The word random hung in the air like poison, its implication unmistakable. Sir, I assure you we're handling the situation. Wayne started quickly, then turned back to Amani. Miss Johnson, please. As a courtesy to a long-standing. The answer is no, Amani said, her voice like steel. She took out her phone. And I want to be clear, what's happening right now is discrimination. I'm being asked to move because Mr. Whitfield, a white man, wants my seat. I'm documenting this conversation, and I suggest you consider the implications of your actions. Panic flickered across Wayne's face, quickly replaced by a brittle defensiveness. That's completely untrue. This has nothing to do with anything like that. It's about respecting our long-standing customers. Then why wasn't I considered a long-standing customer when I checked in? She asked, her tone calm but razor-sharp. Keep your soul intact. That guiding principle, passed down from her mother, had defined Jasmine Winter's entire leadership philosophy. At Innosphere she'd built a culture of inclusion from the ground up, enforcing strict anti-discrimination policies long before it became an industry trend. So when the opportunity arose to acquire Legacy Airlines, Jasmine saw more than a business deal. She saw a chance to reform an industry where bias, both subtle and overt, was often left unchecked. The acquisition had been finalized at 3 a.m. that very morning, officially making Jasmine the new owner of the very plane she was about to board. Not that the staff would know it. Her executive assistant, Valencia Washington, had booked the ticket through standard channels under her legal name. No CEO title, no VIP alerts. Jasmine had been firm. I need to see what our customers experience, especially those who look like us. She was exhausted, grief, stress, and 30 hours without sleep pressing down on her like a lead blanket. Her mother's funeral was tomorrow, and all Jasmine wanted was a quiet flight to gather her thoughts. She boarded discreetly in simple jeans and a navy blouse. No designer labels, no entourage, just a small diamond pendant holding her mother's photo resting gently against her collarbone. I miss you, Mom, she whispered, fingers grazing the pendant as she settled into seat 2A. I hope I'm making you proud." She had no idea how quickly those lessons about dignity, restraint, and standing her ground would be put to the test. First class was supposed to be a sanctuary, but from the moment she stepped on board, Jasmine felt something shift. Eyes followed, her curious, assessing, some barely masking their disapproval. An older white couple visibly clutched their designer bags as she passed. At the front of the cabin stood Brenda Parker, a blonde flight attendant in her late 40s, with a manufactured smile and icy eyes. She was all warmth as she greeted the other passengers, but her demeanor changed instantly when Jasmine approached. "Economy boarding is through the rear entrance," Brenda said, not even glancing at her ticket. "I'm in first class. Seat 2A. Jasmine calmly presented her boarding pass. Brenda scanned it with narrowed eyes, her mouth pinched. "Very well," she said flatly, stepping aside without another word, as Jasmine took her seat. She observed Brenda's demeanor toward the other passengers. "Mr. Hayes. So wonderful to see you again." Brenda beamed across the aisle. "Your usual Krug champagne." Daniel Hayes, an older executive type in a crisp suit and six-figure watch, nodded approvingly. "Thank you, Brenda. You always take such good care of me." Brenda flitted through the cabin, serving every first-class passenger their preferred beverages, with one glaring exception, Jasmine. When Brenda passed again, Jasmine raised her hand politely. "Excuse me, may I please have some water?" Brenda's smile thinned. "We'll be serving after takeoff." "But everyone else has already been served," Jasmine said softly. "I'll get to you when I can," Brenda snapped, briskly moving past. The plane took off. Jasmine closed her eyes, trying to focus on her mother's funeral arrangements. But when she awoke 20 minutes later, the drink service was nearly finished. Brenda had somehow managed to skip her entirely. "Excuse me," Jasmine called as Brenda passed. "I still haven't received any beverage service." "You were sleeping," Brenda said curtly. "I'd still appreciate some water, please." With obvious reluctance, Brenda filled a plastic cup unlike the glass tumblers everyone else had received, and practically dropped it onto Jasmine's tray table. The water splashed onto her jeans. "Oops," Brenda said, without a hint of apology. Jasmine dabbed the spill with a napkin, breathing deeply. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Choose your battles wisely, baby." Around her, other passengers were offered warm towels, pillows, and blankets. Mr. Hayes had been given a full spread of reading material. Meanwhile, Jasmine shivered as the cabin temperature dropped. She pressed her call button. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Brenda walked by several times, purposefully ignoring the glowing light above Jasmine's seat. Finally, Jasmine rose and approached her at the galley, voice calm but firm. "Excuse me. I pressed my call button a while ago. It's quite cold. Could I please have a blanket?" Brenda crossed her arms. "The blankets and pillows are reserved for real first-class passengers. We have limited supplies." Jasmine blinked. "I am a first-class passenger. I'm in seat 2A. Brenda's voice dropped to a mocking lilt. "And how exactly did you get that seat?" Passengers nearby turned toward the galley, drawn by the tension. "I purchased it. Just like everyone else," Jasmine replied evenly. Brenda scoffed. "Right. I'm sure there's nothing unusual about that reservation." Jasmine felt her patience fraying but held her ground. "I'm simply asking for the same amenities being offered to others in my cabin." Brenda leaned in, lowering her voice but not her contempt. "We both know you don't belong in first class. I don't know how you got that seat, but I'm not wasting premium service on someone who clearly isn't a premium customer." The words cut, but they weren't unfamiliar. Jasmine had heard them in boardrooms, pitch meetings, and at luxury hotel lobbies. This time, she reached into her pocket and held up her boarding pass. "My ticket entitles me to all first-class amenities," she said clearly, ensuring those within earshot could hear every word. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor, please." Jasmine's voice was calm, steady, though the tension in her jaw betrayed how tightly she was holding herself together. Brenda's face flushed red. "Are you threatening me?" "Not at all," Jasmine replied, unwavering. "I'm simply requesting to speak with a supervisor about the discrepancy in service I've experienced." By now, several passengers were openly watching. Daniel Hayes smirked from across the aisle, while an elderly couple behind Jasmine exchanged whispered remarks behind cupped hands. Brenda folded her arms tightly across her chest. "You need to return to your seat. Now." "I will," Jasmine answered, her voice still composed. "After you provide the blanket, I request a door. Allow me to speak with a supervisor." Brenda's lips curled into a sneer. "You people always think you're entitled to special treatment." Jasmine blinked. "You people," she echoed, her tone controlled but laced with steel. "I'm calling the captain. You'll be removed at the next stop," Brenda snapped, reaching for the cabin phone. Jasmine raised her boarding pass once more. "Please, just look at my ticket. I'm in the correct seat and entitled to the same service as every other first-class passenger." And then it happened, as Jasmine calmly extended her arm, boarding pass in hand. Brenda lashed out quick and calculated. The slap landed hard against Jasmine's cheek, the sound sharp and unmistakable. Her head jerked sideways from the force. Gasps erupted across the cabin. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The hum of the aircraft gave way to stunned silence. Brenda's voice cut through it, loud and venomous. "Your kind doesn't belong here." Jasmine sat frozen, cheek throbbing, tears burning behind her eyes, not from pain, but from rage and humiliation. In that moment, she wasn't a billionaire tech mogul, not the newly minted owner of the airline. She was just another black woman being told, in front of a crowd, that she didn't belong. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "This is your captain speaking. We've been informed of a situation in the cabin. We are returning to the gate to address the matter. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for arrival." Jasmine walked back to her seat in silence, aware of the stares that followed her every step. Some faces were shocked, others smug. Her hand instinctively moved to her cheek, then to the pendant at her neck, her mother's photo nestled inside. Drawing strength from Eloise's memory, she took out her phone, no longer caring about in-flight device restrictions. It was time to make a call that would change everything. As she sat in her seat, heartbeat pounding in her ears, hushed conversations rippled through the cabin. Some passengers whispered with sympathy. Others looked satisfied, like order had been restored. What would you do if you saw someone physically assaulted for simply requesting equal treatment? Would you say something? Would you speak up? Comment 1 if you believe Brenda was completely out of line. Comment 2 if you think Jasmine should have just stayed silent. Like this post if you've ever stood up to discrimination, and follow to see how Jasmine handles what happens next. A soft voice interrupted Jasmine's daze. "Are you okay?" She turned to see a young Latina woman in the row behind her, leaning forward with a tissue. "I'm Emily Rodriguez. What that woman did to you, completely unacceptable." Jasmine accepted the tissue, whispering, "Thank you. I'm Jasmine." Across the aisle, Daniel Hayes snorted. "Should have known your place," he muttered just loud enough for her to hear. Brenda returned, striding down the aisle, like a triumphant soldier. Her voice rang out. "Security will be meeting the aircraft when we arrive. You'll be removed from the plane. Assaulting a flight attendant is a federal offense." Jasmine turned to her, stunned. "Assaulting?" she repeated, incredulous. "You slapped me. That's not how I'll be reporting it," Brenda said with a smirk. "And who do you think they'll believe?" Before Jasmine could respond, the intercom crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Kenneth Wilson. Due to a situation in the cabin, we will be returning to the gate. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We apologize for the inconvenience." Jasmine already had her phone in hand, Airline regulations be damned, for missed calls from Valencia. Put that away immediately. Brenda barked. Using phones during descent is a federal violation. That's another offense I'll be reporting. Jasmine ignored her. She tapped Valencia's number and held the phone to her ear. That's it. Brenda snapped, reaching toward her. You're now interfering with flight operations. I'm adding that to the list. Jasmine turned away from her, voice calm, but urgent. Val, there's been an incident on the flight. A flight attendant just physically assaulted me. They're turning the plane around, planning to have me removed. Brenda's eyes flared with frustration at being ignored. Give me that phone. Now. Contact Charles Thompson, Jasmine continued, her tone composed, unfazed. Legacy's regional manager. Tell him Jasmine Winters needs him at the gate immediately. Brenda froze, hands suspended mid-air. Double quotes Jasmine. Winters. She echoed. There was recognition now, a flicker of unease. Yes, Jasmine said, deliberately loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. And I'm also contacting our legal team to prepare for assault and discrimination filings. Outside the window, 2 airport security vehicles waited, lights flashing against the glass. Brenda's smug grin returned. Your little phone call won't save you, she sneered. Security knows exactly how to deal with passengers who don't know their place. From behind, Emily Rodriguez discreetly held out her phone, screen facing Jasmine. A video of the incident played in clear detail. Brenda's slap, her words, and her venomous "your kind" comment. Emily gave a reassuring nod. The aircraft docked. The door opened. Captain Wilson stepped out from the cockpit, stern and unreadable. He spoke briefly with Brenda, who pointed directly at Jasmine. Ma'am, I need you to remain seated while we sort this out, he said to Jasmine. His tone was clipped, his eyes neutral. Before Jasmine could respond, a sharply dressed man boarded Charles Thompson, Legacy Airlines regional manager, flanked by 2 security officers. His face was tight with concern as he scanned the cabin. Miss Winters, he said, approaching quickly. I came as soon as I received the call. Brenda blinked. You know this woman? She asked, voice wavering. Charles ignored her, turning directly to Jasmine. Ms. Winters, I'm horrified by what I've been told. Would you prefer to handle this privately? No, Jasmine replied evenly. Since the humiliation happened publicly, we'll address it the same way. Brenda stepped forward, defensive. Mr. Thompson, this passenger was disruptive and aggressive. She needs to be removed. Charles cut her off, face pale. Miss Parker, do you have any idea who this passenger is? Brenda crossed her arms. I don't care if she's the Queen of England. She doesn't belong in first class. A chilling silence fell across the cabin. Captain Wilson took a careful step back. Charles's voice dropped, shaking slightly. Brenda, you physically assaulted Jasmine Winters, CEO of Innisphere, and, as of this morning, the new owner of Legacy Airlines. Brenda's face drained of color. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Jasmine rose from her seat, eyes locked on her. That's right. I own this airline. I own this aircraft. And you just proved publicly why I had to acquire it in the first place. Gasps echoed throughout the cabin. Daniel Hayes nearly choked on his champagne. I didn't know, Brenda stammered. You weren't dressed like what? Jasmine interrupted. Like someone who belongs in first class. Like someone who deserves basic dignity and respect. Emily stood. I recorded the whole thing. Ms. Winters, the assault, the racism, everything. Charles turned to Brenda, his face ashen. Miss Parker, please collect your belongings. Your employment with Legacy Airlines is terminated, effective immediately. You can't do that, Brenda cried, her voice pitching higher. Actually, I can, Jasmine replied, her tone measured. But more importantly, I need to get to Atlanta. My mother's funeral is tomorrow. I don't have time for this nonsense. The finality in her voice silenced the entire cabin. Even Daniel Hayes looked away, shame creeping across his once smirking face. Brenda was escorted off the plane, her protests trailing behind her, unheard. Jasmine sat down slowly, fingers brushing the pendant at her neck, her mother's photo close to her heart. The fire in her cheek still burned, but something deeper had settled, a quiet strength. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Sometimes, baby girl, justice comes when you least expect it. I can arrange a private flight to Atlanta immediately, Charles offered. Jasmine shook her head. That won't be necessary, Charles. I want to continue on this flight as scheduled. I need to be in Atlanta today for my mother's funeral. Charles's expression softened, his posture shifting from executive urgency to genuine sympathy. I'm very sorry for your loss, Ms. Winters. Please accept my condolences. Thank you, Jasmine said, her voice composed. What I need now is for this flight to resume with professional service for all passengers, regardless of how they're dressed or what they look like. Charles nodded firmly. Of course. I've already arranged for a replacement crew. The delay will be minimal. Within 15 minutes, a new flight crew had boarded. It was clear they'd been thoroughly briefed. Their demeanor was the very definition of professional courtesies, especially toward Jasmine. Without being asked, they provided her with a premium blanket, a plush pillow, and a fresh glass of water served in proper glassware. Captain Wilson, who had remained aboard, approached her seat personally. Ms. Winters, he said, removing his cap respectfully, on behalf of the flight crew, I want to sincerely apologize for what occurred. I wasn't fully aware of the situation until it escalated. Thank you, Captain, Jasmine replied. I appreciate your professionalism. Let's get everyone to their destination safely. As the aircraft prepared for its second takeoff, Daniel Hayes cleared his throat from across the aisle. Ms. Winters, he said, extending a business card between two manicured fingers. Daniel Hayes, CEO of Hayes Pharmaceuticals. I've been following Innosphere's incredible growth. Perhaps we could discuss potential synergies between our companies. Jasmine regarded the card coolly, recalling his earlier comment. Should have known your place, Mr. Hayes, she replied, voice level. I generally don't conduct business with people who find entertainment in others being discriminated against. She let the words settle before continuing. But I'll have my assistant forward you information about Innosphere's anti-bias training program. Your company might benefit from it. Hayes paled, withdrawing the card, his confidence clearly shaken. As the plane gained altitude, Emily Rodriguez leaned forward from the row behind. Ms. Winters, I transferred the video to my cloud storage. I'm happy to share it with you, if it helps. Jasmine turned to face her. Thank you, Emily. That's very kind. May I ask why? Did you decide to record it? Emily's face darkened slightly. Because I've been on the receiving end of that same treatment. Not everyone has the power to fight back like you do. When I saw what was happening, I thought, at the very least, there should be evidence. Jasmine nodded. I understand completely. I'd appreciate a copy of the video, and your contact information, if you don't mind. Around them, passengers who had previously avoided Jasmine's gaze now subtly glanced her way, their phones in hand, expressions shifting as they Googled her name. Whispers swept through the cabin as they discovered the full scope of her identity. Polite smiles replaced sidelong glances. As the flight continued, Jasmine sat quietly, gazing out the window. The confrontation had stirred memories. The boutique where a saleswoman trailed her suspiciously. The real estate agent who forgot to show her the luxury listings. The venture capitalist who asked if she was really the co-founder. Her mother had always said, success doesn't shield you from prejudice. It just changes how it shows up. Eloise had been right. Even with billions in her account, Jasmine still carried the same burden. Her phone buzzed a message from Valencia. PR team assembled. Legal standing by. How do you want to proceed? Jasmine stared at the screen. She had the power to obliterate Brenda Parker's career. A discrimination lawsuit would be swift, winnable, and highly public. The video evidence alone would dominate headlines. But would it solve anything? She thought of the bigger picture. One termination wouldn't fix a culture. For every Brenda Parker, there were dozens more subtler, quieter, but just as harmful. She typed back, "This isn't about one flight attendant. I want a full audit of customer complaints across Legacy Airlines. Focus on potential discrimination patterns. Pull HR records. I want to see if this is systemic. Let's find out how deep this goes." Valencia responded quickly, already on it. Early findings suggest this isn't isolated. Preliminary report ready when you land. Jasmine glanced down at the diamond pendant resting at her collarbone, her mother's photo inside. Eloise hadn't raised her to chase vengeance. She'd taught her to build change that lasts. The slap that burned her cheek would become the spark for sweeping reform as the plane began its descent into Atlanta. Jasmine typed a final message to Valencia. Schedule a company-wide town hall. I want every Legacy Airlines employee there next week. It's time they meet their new owner. The replacement flight attendant approached, offering a warm smile. Ms. Winters will be landing shortly. Is there anything else I can get for you? Jasmine returned the smile. No, thank you. But I would like to know your name. Shannon Williams, ma'am. Thank you for your professionalism, Shannon. I look forward to seeing more of that quality throughout Legacy Airlines. The front door, her voice softer now. They confirmed everything is prepared for tomorrow. The service will begin at 11 a.m. Jasmine nodded, her eyes on the porch. Steps she used to skip up as a little girl. Thank you, Val, for everything. Valencia hesitated before speaking again. I know this isn't the time, but there's one more thing I need to show you. She handed Jasmine a sealed envelope. From the back of the portfolio, it's from your mother. Jasmine took it slowly, her breath catching. The envelope was hand-addressed in Eloise's neat cursive. She traced the writing with her thumb before tucking it under her arm. Later, she said quietly, after the service. Inside the home, familiar warmth wrapped around Hertha, scent of cinnamon, polished wood, and old books. Her mother's presence lingered in every detail. The lace curtains, the jazz records stacked by the turntable, the photo wall lined with generations of Winter's women. Valencia set the portfolio on the kitchen counter. We'll need to go public soon. If we control the narrative, we can frame this not as a scandal, but as a reckoning and a transformation. Jasmine nodded. We'll do a press conference the day after the funeral. But this isn't just PR cleanup, Val. I want a top-down overhaul of Legacy Airlines. Every policy, every executive, every gate agent. Valencia's eyes gleamed with quiet pride. Then we'd better prepare. Because what you're planning, it's not just a culture shift. It's a revolution. Jasmine walked to the window, watching the sunset over her neighborhood. Kids rode bikes down the street. A woman sold peach cobbler from a table near the corner. This place had shaped her, taught her resilience and grace, and her mother, through every hardship, had modeled unshakable dignity. She pressed a hand against the glass. My mother didn't fight her whole life for me to make billions and stay silent when I see injustice. If Legacy Airlines wants to carry my name into the future, then it's going to carry my values too. Valencia smiled. So what do we call this new direction? Jasmine turned back, calm and resolute. The Eloise Initiative. The choir began to sing Precious Lord, Take My Hand. Jasmine felt tears sting her eyes for the first time that morning. Valencia gently reached over and squeezed her hand. The sanctuary, with its stained glass windows and carved wooden pews, echoed with the voices of the community that had raised her and that had loved Eloise like family. Reverend Carter, who had known Eloise since Jasmine was a girl, stepped up to deliver the eulogy. Sister Eloise Winters was more than a mother, neighbor, and friend. She was a pillar, a quiet force of wisdom who believed in justice, compassion, and truth. She raised her daughter to carry those values into every room she entered, and today, we see that legacy alive in Jasmine. Jasmine sat tall, grief and pride warring in her chest. This was the woman who had taught her to never bow to injustice, to lead with grace, even when the world met her with cruelty. She thought of the slap, of the data, of the employees too afraid to speak, and she knew this wasn't just mourning. It was a call. After the service, guests gathered in the fellowship hall for a repast. Plates of fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, and peach cobbler passed from hand to hand, along with stories and laughter and tears. Andrea Bennett, the nurse, sat with Jasmine briefly, sharing a final memory. She told me once, Andrea said, that the hardest part of getting older wasn't the aches or the treatments, it was knowing there was still so much left to fix in the world, and not enough time to fix it herself. But she said you'd finish what she started. Jasmine blinked back tears. Then I will. That evening, back at the house, Jasmine finally opened the envelope Valencia had given her, the one from her mother. Inside was a single handwritten letter. My dearest Jasmine, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer physically by your side, but know that I will never truly leave you. I've watched you grow from a bold little girl into a fierce, brilliant woman. I know the world hasn't always treated you fairly, and still, you've met it with determination and compassion. I worried sometimes that success might harden you, that wealth might silence that fire in you, but I see now that it's only made you stronger. You carry the hopes of generations in you, not just mine, but those of your grandmother, and her mother before her. Don't let the weight of power distract you from your purpose. Use it. Speak up, clean house when you must. Uplift those who need lifting. And never, ever, let anyone convince you that you don't belong at the head of the table. You don't just belong, you built the table. With all my love and belief in you, Mama. Jasmine folded the letter slowly, placing it in her mother's jewelry box alongside the photo pendant she always wore. Her eyes were dry now, her purpose clear. The next day, the headlines would shift. The public would see a CEO not backing down, but stepping up. Whistleblowers would find safe ground. Executives would be held accountable. And the Eloise Initiative would begin not as a PR move, but as a cultural revolution. Because Jasmine Winters wasn't just flying Legacy Airlines into the future. She was rewriting its flight plan. Jasmine's phone rang. Charles Thompson again. She answered on speaker. Ms. Winters, I've been trying to get in touch with you, he said, his voice tight with urgency. I was at my mother's funeral, Charles, Jasmine replied, her tone cool and unmistakably firm. Yes, of course, my deepest condolences, he stammered. I'm calling because Lawrence Phillips has called an emergency board meeting to raise concerns about corporate governance in light of the acquisition. It appears he may be preparing to contest your authority regarding executive decisions. Jasmine's expression didn't change, but her voice dropped into a level calm that signaled danger. Is that so? She said evenly. Then I suggest he brace himself for a very different kind of meeting. When the world tells you to sit down, you stand taller, not just for yourself, but for everyone watching. Jasmine turned from the window, her voice calm and resolute. We don't just fix this, we lead. The next morning, press conference, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. A crowd of reporters, camera crews, and corporate representatives packed into the sleek glass atrium near Legacy Airlines Executive Terminal. Microphones lined the podium, each one carrying the weight of public scrutiny. A banner behind the stage displayed the newly updated Legacy Airlines logos, subtly altered to include a circle of interlocked hands. Jasmine Winters stepped up to the microphone. Flanked by Valencia Washington on one side and Emily Rodriguez on the other. Her tailored navy suit was understated but commanding. The mark from the slap had faded, but not the memory. She looked out at the sea of cameras, not a trace of fear in her eyes. "Good morning. My name is Jasmine Winters. I am the CEO of Innosphere, and, as of this year, the majority owner of Legacy Airlines. 2 days ago, I boarded Flight 486 as a first-class passenger. I was harassed, denied service, and physically assaulted. Not because of anything I said or did, but because of who I am. Let me be very clear. This is not just about one flight attendant or one incident. This is about a culture one that tolerated, protected, and in many ways encouraged discrimination." A hush fell over the room. Journalists were no longer just reporting. They were listening. Since our acquisition, our team has been conducting an internal audit of Legacy Airlines. What we've uncovered is appalling racial profiling disguised as customer service strategy, internal communications steeped in bias, and a system that punished those who dared speak out. But today, we begin something different. We begin the Eloise Initiative. Valencia stepped forward and handed Jasmine a small velvet box. Jasmine opened it to reveal a gold pin shaped like a feather, Eloise's symbol of grace under fire, named after my mother, who believed deeply in dignity, justice, and human decency. The Eloise Initiative is a complete overhaul of Legacy's internal culture, policies, and leadership. Starting today, every employee will undergo independent anti-bias and empathy training not once, but on a recurring basis. A new oversight board, diverse, independent, and empowered, will review customer and employee discrimination complaints. Executive bonuses will now be tied to measurable improvements in equity and service parity. And most importantly, the HR and compliance structures that enabled this culture will be dismantled and rebuilt from the ground up. Jasmine paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Some will say this is too much, too fast. I say it's long overdue. And to those in leadership who are more interested in protecting the past than building the future, your time is up. Reporters shouted questions. Jasmine pointed to one in the front. What will happen to the executives involved, including Lawrence Phillips? An internal investigation is underway, Jasmine said. But let me be clear. If you enabled this culture, if you silenced whistleblowers or buried complaints, you will be held accountable. No exceptions. Another voice called out, and what about Brenda Parker? Jasmine's expression didn't change. She will face the appropriate legal and professional consequences. But let's not mistake the symptom for the system. We're not just pulling weeds, we're rebuilding the soil. As she stepped down from the podium, flashbulbs exploded. Valencia joined her at her side, Emily Rodriguez, not far behind. You think they're ready for this? Valencia asked quietly. Jasmine smiled, her mother's feather pin catching the morning light. They don't have a choice. Jasmine held Brenda's gaze, unwavering. You felt threatened, she repeated, her voice cool and precise. By a seated, unarmed woman showing you her boarding pass. A wave of murmurs rippled through the audience. Brenda's attorney reached for the mic, but Jasmine raised a hand, not in interruption, but with authority. Let her speak. Brenda's confidence was cracking under the weight of the cameras, the eyes, and her own unraveling defense. I reacted. It was a mistake. But I shouldn't lose my career over this. I was doing what I was trained to do. Jasmine stepped slightly to the side, allowing the projected document behind her to come back into view, the same memo Brenda had referenced, signed by HR Director Lawrence Phillips. This memo doesn't excuse your actions, she said, but it does implicate a system that taught people like you to see black and brown passengers as threats, and privilege as something that comes with a dress code. Brenda opened her mouth to protest, but Jasmine continued. You weren't just following policy. You chose to escalate. You chose to slap me. That wasn't training. That was hate. And hate, Ms. Parker, has no place at Legacy Airlines or anywhere. I lead. Silence. Then applause. It started with Emily Rodriguez, then the journalists, then a few Legacy board members standing in the back. It built into something undeniable. Not a spectacle, but a reckoning. Jasmine turned back to the podium, finishing what she had come to say. Let me be clear. This moment is not about revenge. It's about responsibility. Leadership is not defined by titles, it's defined by accountability. And starting today, Legacy Airlines will be accountable to its passengers, to its employees, and to the values we claim to uphold. She took a deep breath. We are not patching up a broken system. We are rebuilding it from the ground up. She stepped down to a standing ovation. Tomorrow, Jasmine knew, was only the beginning. The garden around her was a mixture of stillness and memory. Hydrangeas bloomed in soft blues and purples, their full heads swaying gently in the warm evening breeze. It was here that Eloise had taught Jasmine her first lessons in patience and growth, not just of plants, but of people. Of values. Jasmine sat quietly, watching the last light of day fade behind the oaks, her mind turning not to boardrooms or headlines, but to the simple wisdom her mother had passed down. You don't fight fire with fire. You grow something stronger, deeper roots. They can't tear out. The scandal, the press conference, the firings, none of it had been planned, but none of it had been out of character either, because Jasmine hadn't built her empire by reacting. She had built it by responding with clarity, strategy, and integrity. And now, she had done the same with Legacy Airlines. Inside the house, a quiet chime reminded her it was nearly time for her evening call with the interim board. But for a moment longer, she stayed where she was, letting the hush of twilight wrap around her. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Let this matter. Let it last." A single firefly blinked into view. Change had begun. Real, structural, uncomfortable change. Not just in policy, but in perception, in what people expected from companies, from leaders, from each other. And Jasmine Winters would make sure it didn't stop here. Transforming Legacy Airlines would bring no shortage of new challenges. But that night, beneath the quiet sky of Atlanta, Jasmine found peace, knowing she was honoring her mother's most sacred lesson. Dignity is not earned by wealth or granted by status. It is the birthright of every human being. The initial wave of support following Jasmine's press conference soon gave way to a far more complex reality. Changing an entrenched corporate culture wouldn't happen overnight, and it wouldn't happen without resistance. 3 weeks after announcing her sweeping reforms, Jasmine faced growing internal opposition. During a morning briefing at the newly established transition headquarters in Atlanta, Valencia delivered a troubling update. "Lawrence Phillips isn't going quietly," she said, showing Jasmine internal communications on her tablet. "He's rallying middle management, framing your reforms as a threat to service standards and the Legacy brand." Jasmine scanned the messages. Phillips and his allies were careful, using coded language concerns about premium experience and brand integrity to obscure their continued defense of discriminatory practices. "They're still protecting the old system," Jasmine said, jaw tightening. "We need to confront this head-on." The resistance wasn't limited to whispers in company emails. Jasmine had begun receiving death threats. Security had been increased at all Innosphere and Legacy offices. Conservative media outlets cast doubt on the original incident, suggesting it had been exaggerated for political motives. Some longtime corporate clients quietly pulled contracts, citing uncertainty during the transition. Most troubling of all, intelligence gathered by the network revealed that Phillips had been holding clandestine meetings with key managers. He was instructing them to slow-roll implementation of new policies and to document any service disruptions in a way that could be blamed on the reforms. their manufacturing failure. Valencia said grimly, sabotaging the rollout. So they can argue inclusion doesn't work. Jasmine's security chief, Darnell Johnson, entered with another update. Ms. Winters, we've confirmed that Daniel Hayes has been meeting with Lawrence Phillips. It appears they're exploring a buyout offer trying to recruit investors who think you'll walk away if the pressure mounts. Jasmine arched an eyebrow. Hayes, the same passenger who watched everything happen and later apologized for staying silent. The same, Darnell confirmed. Apparently, that apology might have been strategic. Jasmine gave a humorless laugh. They clearly don't know me very well. Complicating matters further, Brenda Parker, despite initially agreeing to a plea deal, reversed course and now claimed she was being persecuted for enforcing company policy. Her attorney began making rounds on national news networks, casting Brenda as a scapegoat for the misdeeds of upper management. She's not entirely wrong, Jasmine acknowledged during a strategy meeting. She acted horribly, yes, but she was also shaped by a culture that normalized profiling. If we only remove individuals without fixing the system, we've failed. While media narratives clashed and legal battles simmered, Jasmine turned to a different solution: direct engagement. She launched a company-wide listening initiative, holding small group meetings with employees at all levels, from baggage handlers to pilots. In a candid session with flight attendants at the Atlanta hub, a veteran named Thomas Wilson spoke up. Ms. Winters, I've been here 22 years. I've watched these protocols shift over time. A lot of us hated them, but anyone who questioned the rules got fewer hours or less desirable routes. Tell me more, Jasmine urged. Thomas explained how flight attendants were unofficially trained to verify seat assignments using vague criteria that disproportionately flagged passengers of color. Staff who didn't participate were deemed not team players and subtly punished. It wasn't just Brenda, said Sophia Chen, another flight attendant. Many of us followed those practices because we felt trapped. It was that or risk our careers. These conversations revealed a deeper truth. Many employees hadn't embraced the discriminatory culture they had been surviving it, and now, some were ready to help change it. Meanwhile, Valencia's investigation uncovered even more disturbing evidence. Phillips and other executives had deliberately blocked qualified minorities from promotion for years, biased performance reviews and manipulated evaluation criteria ensured legacy airlines. Leadership remained overwhelmingly white. The problem wasn't just how they treated passengers, Valencia reported. Discrimination shaped every part of the company: hiring, promotion, retention. Jasmine's legal team expanded their strategy. While preparing to defend against Brenda Parker's claims, they also began assembling employment discrimination cases against former executives. Then came the breakthrough. Emily Rodriguez, now head of the newly formed Customer Experience Advisory Board, uncovered audio recordings from an internal strategy meeting. In the recordings, Phillips and his allies were heard openly discussing ways to obstruct Jasmine's policies, damage customer service metrics, and create the illusion that the new inclusive practices were responsible. It was a turning point. They weren't just resisting change, they were conspiring to destroy it. We need to document every service delay, every customer complaint during this transition, Phillips was heard saying in the recording. Build a case that these inclusive policies are hurting the business. Once we have enough evidence of declining service standards, the board will have to reconsider. The recording also confirmed what Jasmine had suspected. Daniel Hayes had offered to finance a management buyout if Phillips and his allies could prove that her leadership was eroding the company's value. Jasmine's expression hardened as Valencia finished playing the audio. This changes everything, she said. They've moved from passive resistance to active sabotage. With the recordings in hand, Jasmine launched the next phase of her strategy. She called an emergency board meeting, presenting not only the audio evidence, but also a detailed dossier of internal communications, financial inconsistencies, and the deeply rooted patterns of discrimination that had plagued Legacy Airlines for years. Legacy Airlines stands at a crossroads, she told the stunned board. We can either embrace comprehensive transformation and set a new industry standard, or continue resisting progress until this company's reputation and value are irreparably damaged. The board had no choice. The evidence was overwhelming. By unanimous vote, the board endorsed Jasmine's transformation plan and approved legal action against the former executives involved in the sabotage, including Phillips. Within days, their employment was terminated. Investigations expanded to include potential criminal charges for evidence tampering and corporate misconduct. With the resistance defanged and the board's full support secured, Jasmine accelerated the rollout of her reforms. The independent review board began processing hundreds of backlogged discrimination complaints. Victims received long overdue remedies, including reinstatements, financial compensation, and formal apologies. New accountability systems were introduced to ensure complaints would never again be buried. A passenger bill of rights was posted across every check-in counter, gate, and cabin. Even Brenda Parker, once the face of the scandal, had a change of course. Presented with the full scope of internal datehand, the clear falsification of her claims, Brenda accepted a revised plea deal. She issued a public apology and agreed to participate in developing anti-bias training materials, using her story as a cautionary tale about complicity and growth. As for Phillips and his co-conspirators, they now faced far more than lost titles. Legal proceedings moved swiftly, and criminal charges loomed for several. The company had made a statement. Discrimination was no longer business as usual. And then, something unexpected happened. Airlines across the industry began reaching out. CEOs, HR directors, and operations chiefs requested meetings with Jasmine, asking for insight into the reforms she was implementing. Civil rights organizations approached Legacy to co-develop industry-wide best practices. Media outlets that had once questioned Jasmine's motives now ran op-eds, praising the airline's radical transparency. What had once been a PR nightmare was becoming a competitive advantage. 6 months later, Jasmine stood in her office, overlooking the Atlanta skyline, the early evening light casting soft gold across the city. Valencia entered, tablet in hand. Customer satisfaction is up 12%, she reported. Complaints of discriminatory treatment are down 93%. Employee satisfaction is rising across all departments. And the stock? She smiled. We're up 15% over our pre-incident value. Jasmine nodded slowly, absorbing the numbers. And the resistance? Valencia's smile dimmed, but didn't disappear. Still there, but smaller. Some old guard employees chose to leave rather than adapt. Others, who were skeptical at first, have become advocates. They've seen the results. Jasmine turned back to the window. Change never comes without resistance. She paused. My mother used to say that progress happens when the cost of maintaining the status quo becomes greater than the cost of change. Legacy Airlines' transformation wasn't complete, but the momentum had shifted. The culture that once rewarded silence and exclusion had begun to reward empathy, accountability, and inclusion. Jasmine had taken a moment of personal grief and professional betrayal and turned it into a turning point for an entire industry. As she prepared her remarks for the 6-month follow-up press conference, Jasmine held the diamond pendant around her neck, the one with her mother's photo inside it, whispered softly, "We did it, Mama, and we're just getting started." 1 year after the infamous slap that reverberated across the airline industry, Legacy Airlines no longer existed, at least not under that name. Jasmine Winters stood at a podium in the newly renovated Terminal 5 of John F. Kennedy International Airport. Behind her, a sleek new logo gleamed, a stylized horizon line forming an infinite path, the new emblem of Horizon Airways. Before her stood a crowd of media, employees, civil rights leaders, and airline executives from across the country, all gathered for the official launch of what had become more than just a company. It was now a movement. Today doesn't just mark a rebranding, Jasmine said, her voice steady and warm. It marks the culmination of a fundamental transformation in how we approach air travel. Applause rippled through the crowd. Horizon Airways is built on a simple premise. Every passenger deserves dignity, respect, and exceptional service, not based on how they look, what they wear, or assumptions about their worth, but simply because they chose to fly with us. The journey to this moment had been hard-earned. After the public reckoning, Jasmine had made the bold decision not just to reform legacy airlines, but to reinvent it. The name Horizon symbolized a forward-looking vision. The era of exclusion and silent bias was over. In its place stood a company shaped by purpose, designed with equity at its core. Behind Jasmine stood Valencia Washington, now president of Horizon Airways, Emily Rodriguez, newly appointed chief of customer experience, and Shannon Williams, the flight attendant who had stepped up during that fateful flight and now led the airline's flight attendant training program. The transformation wasn't cosmetic. Every facet of the airline's operations had been rebuilt. The discriminatory passenger prioritization system was gone. In its place stood uniform premium service standards applied equally to all. Hiring and promotion policies were redesigned to prioritize diversity of experience and perspective. Uniforms were reimagined for comfort and inclusion, rather than reinforcing gender norms. Bias training became not a checkbox, but an embedded principle of professional excellence, and the independent review board, created during the crisis, was now a permanent fixture, ensuring transparency and accountability remained non-negotiable. After her remarks, Jasmine mingled with attendees. A former legacy flight attendant, Michael Chen, approached her, his Horizon pin gleaming proudly on his lapel. "I almost quit during the transition," he admitted. "I'd been with Legacy for 15 years and didn't think change like this was possible, but I've never been prouder to do this job. For the first time, I feel like our success is measured by how we serve everyone, not just those who fit the profile." Jasmine smiled. This, not the press, not the praise, was the real reward. Of course, not everyone had landed so gracefully. Lawrence Phillips and several former executives were still facing legal consequences for their attempted sabotage. Daniel Hayes, whose offer to bankroll a hostile takeover had become public, was forced to step down as CEO of his pharmaceutical firm, his reputation irreparably damaged. Brenda Parker, whose slap had sparked the unraveling of it all, now worked for a small regional airline. Her once promising career had collapsed under the weight of her choices. But the new chapter was not about vengeance. It was about vision. Following the launch event, Jasmine boarded Horizon Airways' inaugural flight from New York to San Francisco. She sat in the same first-class seat where she had once been slapped for daring to exist in a space someone else believed she didn't belong. This time, she traveled not in mourning, but in quiet triumph. She wore a simple, elegant, navy pantsuit. Around her neck hung the diamond pendant with her mother's photo, Eloise Winters, whose legacy now flew on every Horizon tail fin. Shannon Williams, who had requested to work this symbolic flight, greeted her with a warm, genuine smile. "Welcome aboard, Miss Winters. It's an honor to have you with us today." "The honor is mine, Shannon," Jasmine replied. "None of this would have been possible without professionals like you, who showed what exceptional service truly means." As passengers continued to board, many recognized Jasmine and stopped to express gratitude. Stories flowed, quiet moments of racial profiling, poor treatment, or painful assumptions, each now met with hope that their children wouldn't experience the same. One passenger, a young black woman traveling with her daughter, paused beside Jasmine's seat. Her voice trembled slightly. "I just wanted to say, thank you, for what you did, for standing up, for making it safer for girls like mine to grow up in a world that sees them." She turned to her daughter, maybe 7 or 8 years old. "This is Miss Jasmine," she said gently. "She's the reason we can sit here today and know we belong." The little girl smiled shyly. Jasmine leaned forward and extended her hand. "It's an honor to fly with you," she said. "And don't ever let anyone make you doubt that you belong wherever you go." The girl nodded solemnly as the plane taxied toward the runway. The sun cast golden light through the window, stretching across the sky like a new beginning. Horizon was no longer just a name, it was a promise, and Jasmine Winters had delivered. "My daughter wants to be like you when she grows up," the woman said quietly. "Not because you're wealthy, but because you used your power to make things better for everyone." The comment touched Jasmine deeply. As the plane prepared for takeoff, she reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year, from the pain of losing her mother to the immense challenge of transforming a company's entire culture. Around her neck, the diamond pendant containing Eloise's photo still hung, a constant reminder of her mother's wisdom and unwavering belief in justice. Eloise had always taught her that real leadership wasn't about control, it was about using whatever influence you had to create something better for others. Since its relaunch, Horizon Airways had become a model of corporate transformation. Awards for customer satisfaction and workplace culture followed the sweeping operational changes. But the true victory was larger. Other airlines had begun to follow Horizon's lead, adopting inclusive policies as more travelers prioritized respect and equity when choosing where to spend their money. Jasmine Scholarship Initiative. Eloise Winters Opportunity Fund was already helping dozens of underserved youth pursue careers in aviation and tech. Several of the first recipients were now interning at Horizon, bringing fresh ideas and energy to the organization. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Jasmine gazed out the window at the limitless horizon. What had begun with humiliation and grief had evolved into systemic change, far beyond anything she could have imagined. In that first painful moment, a flight attendant approached quietly with a glass of water. "Miss Winters, a passenger in row 23 recognized you. She was on that flight last year. She said the changes you've made inspired her to challenge discrimination in her own workplace." Jasmine smiled, accepting the glass with gratitude. She sipped her water, marveling at how a single moment of injustice could spark such wide-reaching impact. That confrontation, once a personal trauma, had become the catalyst for confronting deep biases not just in one airline, but potentially across the entire travel industry. And now, it was evolving again. Jasmine opened her laptop and reviewed the next major initiative, a multi-sector partnership to establish industry-wide standards for inclusive service. The sunlight caught the diamond pendant around her neck. She touched it gently and whispered, "We did it, Mom. We turned injustice into opportunity, just like you always said we could." In that quiet moment, Jasmine understood something clearly. True power isn't found in wealth or titles. It lies in the courage to transform broken systems. 1 year ago, a flight attendant had slapped her, unaware that she owned the plane. Today, that moment had sparked changes that would benefit countless passengers, many of whom would never even know her name. And that, Jasmine thought as the plane soared westward, was a legacy worth building. This story reminds us that dignity isn't something we earn, something we all deserve. Jasmine Winters could have fired one employee and moved on. Instead, she chose to confront the deeper problem, a culture of quiet discrimination that had gone unchallenged for far too long. She didn't just lead, she transformed by turning legacy airlines into Horizon Airways. Jasmine showed that real leadership requires vision, courage, and the will to act. She proved that corporate culture can evolve when leaders commit not only to values, but to accountability. This story teaches us that discrimination often hides behind neutral policies that disproportionately harm marginalized people. Challenging those systems requires persistence, strategy, and empathy. Most of all, it reminds us that a single moment of injustice, when confronted with integrity, can trigger ripples of transformation that stretch far beyond what we ever imagined. We all have influence. We all have a voice. The question is, how will we use it?